It's time for What's in a Name. I'm Ian Riley, and the president of Seventh Town Historical Society, and in place of Eugene Lang today. And today we have a studio audience for the very first time, and we'll find out a little more about them as time goes by.
Yep. And we also have Frank Tripp with us, who has the book launch of the revised book Trips of the Bay of Quinte.
Well, here in the library, Rod, don't we have some trip material?
A couple of years ago, Reverend Ernest Klein called and asked us if we would like all of his research material for the Tripp family. He had just written a book on the Trips of Bay of Quinte, and of course we obliged and received about 25 or 26 three-ring binders of Tripp research. Mr. Klein delivered it and then followed up with a visit last year, and from this there was enough interest generated to redo the book, update it, correct it, and put new material in. And this spring, Reverend Klein sent a letter and followed it up with a box of several more books on local history that we have in the library.
And Reverend Klein is from Michigan, is that not right?
That's right.
Last year when Reverend Klein came and met some Tripps, it was quite interesting, and that's when we met Frank, who we'll meet again in a few minutes, first time.
Should be a good day, Ian.
Yeah. Well, now, Frank, you've been introduced 2 or 3 times so far in this show, and nobody's had a chance to see you yet, but you're here. Now I understand that you're from the United States?
Yes, sir.
Whereabouts?
Cleveland, Ohio. Well, it's south of Cleveland, Brunswick, Ohio.
Brunswick, Ohio. That's where the Brunswick bowling people are.
No, they just, I think they piggybacked on New Brunswick, really.
Well, anyway, what we really want to talk to you about today is that you have come up to meet with your Tripp relatives, as you did last year, only this time you've brought the results of a lot of hard work with you.
Well, we'd hoped to have the main characters, the main people that got this whole project together, but unfortunately we've had a couple of bad knocks, and actually the researcher for both books, the main researcher had a stroke and he's unable to be here, and I am trying to limp along and fill in the gaps for the new book. So. And
I think that main researcher was referred to a little earlier by Rod Green as the Reverend Klein.
Reverend Ernie Klein, and he's coming along, but it was quite severe, and he doesn't see very well, so we can't communicate by email anymore. So makes it tough.
Now I understand that this book that you've brought here is the original Trips of Quinte.
Yes.
That was done how many years ago?
Well, it started about 23 years ago. And the lady that was instrumental in this was a Tripp lady. Her name was Eileen Hammer. And she worked real hard on this, and in the process came across Ernie Klein at one of their meetings, and he then picked up that she had done so much, and he wanted to do so much because his wife was a Tripp. And consequently, they were in collusion, if you will, and got most of the, actually all of what was in the first book, but she unfortunately got sick before we could get the complete story told, and the rush to print was a kind of a present for her before she passed on. And so her daughter, who is Arlene Fanning, she edited all of that book and then transposed it into this book and added the new names, like the Waddingtons, Lazier, Cuny, and the other names that are connected to the Tripp. There's over 4,000 names in the back of this book that have to do with Tripp.
And maybe we can bring that book up so people can see it.
This is the new edition here. There's about 95 pages added to this, and consequently we have added a lot to, and as anybody knows in this genealogy thing, it changes by the day. You know, tomorrow we'll have more to add or take away from. So this is part of the
You probably won't take too many out, but there'll be more to add that people just may not survive to, which is one of the problems that we have in life.
I think the main thing is we done a lot of research in my mother's family, and we went around and tried to restore like graveyard markers and stuff like that, and we found that this was kind of a losing cause because they just kept falling into disrepair. And I've come to the conclusion that the only record that we can leave for these good people, and they've made it work so hard and did so many good things to make it so easy for us today. You know, it's just unbelievable when you get into this, the adversity that they had to go through in order to get us to where we are, and the kinds of things that we have to do now are very simple compared to what they had to do. So I decided then that the only protection for the knowledge that we have right now and for these people that are coming behind us was the printed word, and we should put that in volume and on paper and get it down. And in this case here, there's 2 copies of that book in the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. There's 2 copies of this book in Washington, D.C. There's 2 copies of this in Ottawa, Canada, and we're all on the archives and the official records in the archives. So that is, although I don't like to see the old homesteads and the old grave sites falling into disrepair, I think that that's a kind of a losing battle to try to commemorate our forefathers by doing these kinds of things, and this is a much better instrument to carry on the word, if you will.
Now, Frank, you said a minute ago that some of your forebears had some hardships. Now, I understand, because you were here yesterday and we were doing some research here in the Hastings County land records, which we hold, and we were looking back all the way to the original patent of land that the Tripps still own and back around Bancroft, and certainly
Yes.
in the last century when the people were there, it could have been a hardship to live back there.
It was a hardship to live back there, and you know, our government always trying to do good things for us tend to sometimes lead us up the garden path, and it doesn't get so good. The people who were raised down here, and there's one of the Tripp gentlemen who was born and raised, and his father and his grandfather was here. They stayed on good soil. When the lumber business started up in Hastings, the money was good. People moved up there, and when the lumber was gone, the land wouldn't even feed them, and they had a rough time up in that area. So that's where we came in. Most of the kinds of things that went on, the older folks, when you'd approach them to, what do you want to know that old stuff for? You don't need to know that stuff. We don't want to hear you talking about that stuff. So I think you all have come across that kind of thing, and I don't know whether they expected, if stealing a jam cookie was a real crime in those days, and they wouldn't want anybody to know that something like that happened. So, but we weren't really interested in that. We were interested in how, and I think if any of you have access to the early days on the Bay of Quinte, a Mikan print that was come out in about 1904.
Pioneer Life on the Bay of Quinte.
Yeah, Pioneer Life on the Bay of Quinte. If you have access to that copy, take it home and read it, because that really tells how this happened. It's not in as formal a form as, say, this book is, but it tells a lot more of the story of how rough and tough it was to carry on. So,
well, there are many books like that. One of the things, Frank, that impressed me last year when you and Reverend Klein and your sister and other people came was that some of the Tripp people came a little early, and they said, one lady I remember, I can't remember her name, but she said, that Reverend Klein made a lot of mistakes, and when he gets here, I'm going to tell him all about it. And I remember Reverend Klein saying, and I was kind of hoping today he'd be here so he and I could talk about it, but I'm glad you read my book.
yes.
If I hadn't wrote it, you wouldn't have known the mistakes, and I'd have always been continuing to make them, and the next book won't have them. So I take it you've corrected most of these mistakes.
Well, as I said, there was a rush to print. The editing, we wanted to make sure that Eileen had something to go away with, you know, and that is why the first book was published. I thought she did a tremendous job on the early parts, like going way back to, and Miss Hutchinson here showed me some of the stuff that they brought over, like from 1600 in England. There's in the new book now, there's stuff going way back to 1542 with the Waddingtons, so they're interfaced with the Tripp book. So there is, like I said, there's over 4,000 names in the back of this book in the index, and so we're quite, as I said, there will be additions tomorrow, and there will be corrections tomorrow, because a lot of this stuff, for any of you who have done any of this kind of work at all and sat for hours cross-eyed while looking at microfilm run through a machine and tried, everybody had a different handwriting, everybody used a different format. Sometimes they put the first name, the surname forward, sometimes they put the given name forward, and you're going along and you're reading all the names in this here, and now you got to switch over down this side and back and forth again. So it's really tough going, and the people that persevere with this is the ones. The people like Ernie Clark that are like, or Ernie Klein, like a real bird dog when it comes to tracking these things down.
Well, I was talking to you and your sister before we went on the air, and I just thought I'd hold this up, and there's all these pictures that are in this book, which are really old pictures, and maybe you might want to say something about some of these pictures and who's in them, and because I think that some of our viewers might be interested in some of these pictures.
Our family, my family, is a direct line. We don't have any trouble at all coming down the line to me, for instance, because it comes right off of the Tripp and Mary Jane thing, and then it goes to Isaac Allen too, and he's buried right beside my dad in the Anglican cemetery in Bancroft, and I have a place laid out for myself there. His son was Dan Wesley. Dan Wesley had a farm in fact, we pulled the records yesterday for one of the original farms up in the Bancroft area in Herschel Township. From that, my dad was seventh son of the seventh son. He was quite proud of that, and then there's me, and I'm the head honcho in that family. So all of these here was a direct line, very easy to get the direct line. There wasn't any kind of jumping back and forth. The older boys, there were like two families in the Tripp. There weren't two families as such, but there were older kids, and then he went away for a while working and that kind of thing, and then when he come back, just like World War II, we had baby boomers, you know, and this is the kind of thing we had in the Tripp family. So actually, the oldest boy provided the house for the kids on the lower end, because all the other boys had gone away to work and that kind of thing. So,
well, I understand some of the families were getting to be cheaper by the dozen.
Oh yes, cheaper by the dozen. In the one picture here, he is the one that provided the house for them when the old man was away, and his name is Stephen Allen, and he lived to be 100 years and one day. He lived in Bancroft practically all his life, but he was one of the ones that had to go out to work. The farm would not support his family, so. Okay. So.
Well, that's neat. How often do you get to Canada to do this work?
We used to come quite often. When the kids were young, they always want to come home and see Grandpa. But as of late now, we get up on occasion. We still have a piece of ground that was in the Ottawa Valley up in Bromley that's been in the family for about 150 years, and we go back there every year. We come up to Bancroft for a couple of weeks a year. My sister and I come up, and we have a farm there at Birds Creek on 62 North out of Bancroft, and we have that in a reforestation thing. We pull logs out of it now and again, and it's not a profit-making organization. It's just something we do to keep the old property cleaned up, really. That's what we try to do.
I wanted to ask you something about the printing of this book. I understand that you originally thought this would be going in July, and that printing this book became a very hot topic.
Yes, more than one way a hot topic. We were hot at this end, we weren't getting it, and not knowing, this is my first publication. You have to bear with me. So when I signed the contract, they start talking about color process on the cover and how many colors you were going to have and how much it was going to cost. And it ended up that by the time I got the cover designed, that I was up in a four-color process, which increased the price of the book. But that isn't the only thing it did. When they were printing the cover, the color press caught fire and set them back about a month.
So when he called me, I suggested to him possibly that this is a hot subject because it burnt right up while you were
burned right up,
printing it.
so, yeah.
Well, Frank, how does anybody go about getting this book?
Well, I printed up a bunch of cards and also a description of the book. This is Ian will tell you, this is a non-profit type of an operation here, and we have tried to keep everything in balance. And what happens is I'll give you a card and you'll fill out the card. And if I have to ship it to you from Cleveland, from Brunswick, instead of having a difference in the price, so I'm trying to keep the price at $25, and instead of having the price in the States plus whatever, and GST and OBE and all the other kinds of things that go on in this country, I said, okay, if I ship it to you, it's $25 US. If my sister ships it to you, if she ships it to you, or if I sell it to you here today, it's $25 Canadian. But if they order it from me with the card, then it's about $6 to ship it. That's what it amounts to, and that's really the difference between $25 US and $25 Canadian. So that's the way.
By the time you do the packaging.
Yes.
Well, I understand that you're going to be leaving a few books here so that people could pick them up here.
Yes.
And we would. Marilyn Adams has agreed to sort of be a host for the books for you. And the other thing is that I understand that you're going to make a presentation today to the library here.
Yes, we're trying to put this book into the libraries in the areas like in Belleville and Trenton, and in the areas where there are trips. Down in Brunswick, there's 3 or 4 trip families down in there, and I donated one to our local library in Medina. That's the county seat in Medina County.
So, well, we have Rod Green, who was on just a few minutes before you, and he's the librarian here, and I think he's prepared to accept a copy if you'd like to give it to him.
Yes, we can.
Rod?
I think we can work that out. If I don't get tangled up in this wire now. Okay, in behalf of all the trips that have been and are here today, and in the future, I'd like to make this presentation to the Marilyn Adams Genealogical Society in Ameliasburg.
On behalf of the group here, thank you very much, Frank.
Okay.
Well, that's neat, Frank. I can tell you one thing, that we are really proud to be the recipients and the custodians now of all the trip research that's gone on in the past while from you folks. And we also look forward to this book, and quite a few trips come in here, and many people have looked at the book, and we've mentioned it several times in this program before, the generosity of Reverend Klein and yourself and other trips who have made it their business to make sure that we had this research here. And so we want to thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Oh, you'll see me again. We'll have to keep doing what we're doing in order that this be a success. And like I said before, it's imperative that the people that are behind us now, be looked after and be recorded, and also the younger ones now to pick up and keep going, because it would be a crime for all of Mrs. Hammer's work to go and just fall into disrepair, if you will.
I think that once something is done like this, somebody always seems to step up in the future and keeps on with it. So I think you'll be lucky, and all the trips that are here today, I think that they'll be certainly prepared to dig in and
Well,
pitch in?
Ernie Klein being an old padre from the 82nd Airborne Division, and I was done 5 years in the Canadian Navy in the Fleet Air Arm, and he said that the fact that we were able to pick up from Mrs. Hammer to Ernie to me was something that he had been praying about. So maybe he's got a good guy up there to give us a hand, you know, and if he will, then we'll make sure that we get the rest of it.
So what you're saying is somebody's looking out
for the trips. We'd like to believe that somebody is looking out for trips.
Well, I think they probably are. Well, thanks a lot, Frank.
Okay.